Hey everybody. Hopefully my audio is working. Okay. Mondays. I should probably get the name right. So Money Talk Monday. So second round of having this money discussion. The first week we were talking about Jay-Z's lyrics in 444, that album where he has this song, The Story of OJ. He spits a lot of different financial gems in that. Today, we're going to be talking about Dave Ramsey and specifically why I think, though the plan is good, his plan is really outdated. And I'm going to tell you why. And I know there are plenty of people that are a part of the Dave Ramsey cult and follow that to a T. And I know that the plan can work because I have used the plan myself. However, I do see a lot of holes in the plan. So I'm going to pull up the plan and just talk about it because there's a couple of holes here. And so a couple of things I've already talked about on the channel, and I'm going to relay that to this discussion. And hello, Brian. Welcome in. Nice to see you. Okay, so looking at the baby steps, let me actually pull up the baby steps just so we can all be on the same page of what I am actually talking about. So let me pull those up. So Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps on Ramsey Solutions. He sells this whole platform with Financial University or Financial Peace University. So baby step 1 is save $1,000 for a starter emergency fund. Baby step 2 is to pay off all debt except for the house using the debt snowball approach. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Baby step 3 is to save 3 to 6 months of expenses in a fully funded emergency fund. Baby step 4 is to invest 15% of your household income in retirement. We're not doing any investment until baby step 4. Baby step 5, save for your children's college fund. Baby step 6, pay off your home early. And baby step 7, build wealth and give. Okay, so these are the baby steps. And the one thing I want to point out first off is that these baby steps have not changed since Dave Ramsey developed them about 25 years or so ago in the 90s. So there were a lot of different things happening in the 90s that are not the same today. So we're going to talk about that and we're going to start with baby step 1. I think baby step 1 is my main issue with Dave Ramsey's plan. So here's the thing. Okay, so let me pull up myself here so we can kind of look at it together. Hey, real brother, what's up? Are you doing some food prep? Oh, thanks for listening while you're doing food prep. Hey, Frugal Mama boys. Okay, so let's dig into these baby steps a little bit. So the $1,000 starter emergency fund is supposed to cover some oops moments. Let's say, for example, you lose your job. How are you going to cover your rent for that month until you quickly find something else? What happens if your check engine light is on and you have something that is wrong with your transmission? Well, here's the thing. Dave, Grandpa Dave or Uncle Dave, whatever you want to call him, $1,000 could be a great starter emergency fund if you're in the 90s. If you're living in the 90s, that's great. But guess what, Dave Ramsey? And it's going to get worse because the Fed is printing money, but there's something called inflation. So where is it that you're countering in the inflation? So, okay, yes, you created these baby steps. You haven't touched them since the 90s. And you still think that people are really going to cover oops, my transmission isn't working with $1,000? You think someone's going to cover their rent with $1,000? Be real. Be real. And here's the thing. Dave Ramsey he has a net worth of about $200 million. He may be a little out of touch, on what real people are dealing with. What are you going to do? Let me know in the chat. What are you going to do with $1,000 when something comes up? And I'm saying that as a single woman. A lot of the folks that are looking for solutions have families, they're married, they have children in the home, they have a pet, like they have some type of liabilities, they have other things that they have to handle. So if there's an oops moment, it's very likely that it's going to be more costly. Because yes, families cost money, children cost money. But $1,000, come on. So $1,000 was fine in the 90s. But if you counter in inflation, that $1,000 would have to be at least $2,000 to cover the same type of expenses that Dave Ramsey is talking about. Because even let's take the rent example. The average rent in the United States for a one bedroom, so that's talking about it has to be a single person, maybe a couple in the same place, right? Most likely. One bedroom apartment costs you $1,098 a month. And in most places, let's say you're living in a city, a big city, you're paying more than that. You're paying between $1,200 and $1,500 a month. Like, come on, what is $1,000 going to do for you if you have a real oops moment? What happens in this scenario? You have $1,000, you have an oops moment. That $1,000 doesn't cover everything. How are you going to cover your oops moment? Your oops lost the job, right? Your oops, the transmission went out. The oops, the kids got whatever. Your spouse has got some kind of health issue. Now we have to pay the medical bill. What that does is, yes, it's a little buffer. It's great because a lot of people don't have anything, which is just bad in general. However, it doesn't really do much. So what you may find yourself doing if you are in a situation like a 2020 happening to you, right? You're going to have to go right back into using your credit card and using some debt. So that's probably one of my biggest issues. Hello, Super Touchdown. Welcome in. That's a big issue. So you're starting people off the wrong way because it's outdated. You're basing the savings that people should be taking on based off of how it was back in your day in the 90s. We're in 2021. The other thing it doesn't take into account is things that happen with time, events, and markets. So you're saying save $1,000, wait to pay off all of your debt, because that's baby step 2, is you're focusing on paying that debt. And then you can save 3 to 6 months of expenses. That's crazy, because what happens when we're in a situation like 2020? It would be really helpful for someone if they had known to save 3 to 6 months of expenses, because that makes sense. Because typically, if you're in a recession, they typically last no more than 6 months, generally. So that can kind of weather that storm for you enough for you to find something else, for you to get creative, for you to start delivering pizzas, which Dave Ramsey talks about a lot. Which my problem with that is, what happens when these neuro or whatever trucks and delivery trucks are around and they're taking over those jobs? Stop telling people to deliver pizzas. You can't depend on that. Like, yes, the next 5 years we'll probably have it, but changes are happening really fast. Stop telling people to deliver pizza. Get another creative thing going. Like, you got to get some other kind of side hustle. That's not going to be around forever either. Okay, so that's the issue I have with the savings rate. My issue is not about saving, because I do think I agree with Dave, you need to have a base of a savings so that once you start this journey of debt payoff, you have something to fall back on, because we know things happen. And so, yes, you should have a savings, but no, you should not have a starter savings of $1,000. Come on. Like, at least tell people to start saving $2,500. You should be able to do that, because if you're about to go on this debt journey, he tells people to really kick it in gear and start eating ramen noodles and rice and beans and all this stuff, and don't do anything. Just focus on working. That's all you're doing, is working, paying this debt down. So let's get into that part. So that's my problem with the savings. It's just not high enough for today's world. Dave is stuck in the 90s. And yes, Brian, robot pizza man. So Dave is stuck in the 90s with that. So let's move on to paying off all debt. I love that. Pay off all the debt except the mortgage. It makes sense because with the mortgage, most people are paying for housing anyway, right? Unless you have paid off your mortgages and you're just paying off your taxes and upkeep and whatnot. That's an asset that you're investing in. So pay off all the debt. I agree with this. I agree with his snowball method. Financially, it actually makes sense to pay off the highest interest rate first instead of the debt snowball where you're paying the smallest amount first, using whatever money you were paying on that and adding that to the next highest debt that you have, and you're going forward from there. Mathematically, you should pay off the highest interest rate. However, I 100% do agree with Dave Ramsey when he says it's a psychological thing because finances, yes, there is the logical part of it, but there's also that mental part that a lot of Americans have we have it ingrained in our culture to spend, spend, spend. As soon as we get some money, spend, spend, spend it. We got to burn it. You can't keep money too long. You got to do something with it. I do agree that you should always be doing something with the money. You shouldn't just be holding on to it because money is worthless in itself. It's just paper, unless you do something with it. People are not trying to get money just for the sake of getting money. They want money so they can buy food. They want money so that they can buy a car. They want money so that they can get a nice girlfriend. Or whatever, right? So that's what they want the money for. Not just to hold it and look at the money. It's worthless. However, his whole thinking, so I agree with the plan. I agree with that snowball because yes, it's mental. You have to start seeing some gains. You have to see, oh, I paid off 200. I can do this. Right? But I don't agree with his whole, and yes, King of Kill is saying rice and ramen and rice and beans. I mean, that's literally what he's telling people to do. So what happens in this instance? You just got on a Dave Ramsey plan in 2019. You haven't seen your friends, your family, really not doing anything because everything costs money. Not everything. You can get creative and do some things, but you're telling your friends, nope, 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 family, nope. We're not going to all these birthday parties. We're not doing anything. We're just paying off this debt. 2020 happens and you can't see anybody. And the only thing that people want to do is to go out, go to restaurants, see their people, burn some money, enjoy life. And you can't. You're going to be feeling some sort of way after getting on that Dave Ramsey plan, aren't you? Because life isn't just about the money. There's also experiences. So I think the better option for people, and you can really get burnt out that way. There's a reason why people don't work all year long. There's a reason we have vacations. So I somewhat agree with focusing on paying off the debt, building a plan and a budget, because he highlights the zero-based budget. Yes, have a zero-based budget, but build into your budget something where you can have some enjoyment and you're actually spending money out, eating, at a concert, having a movie, whatever it is you like to do. It does not need to be this bare bones rent, food, car, and that's it. Right? That's nothing else. That's it. That is it. We're not doing anything else. We're eating these ramen noodles. We're staying at home 24/7 because you really get to miss out on life experiences. And here's the thing. We're talking about typically what people are paying off. Brian said, poor Dave. What people are paying off is credit card debt a lot of the time, sometimes medical expenses, but normally credit card debt and student loan debt. Now, CNBC talked about how long it actually takes a person to pay off a credit card and how long it typically takes the average American, rather, to pay off their student debt. So basing student debt off of $40,000, it will take you 21 years to pay off that debt. Now, with Dave Ramsey's plan, it's going to be faster, but it's not going to be in a year unless you're making an extremely high income. Next, we look at credit card debt. Credit card debt should be easier, right? CNBC says it takes the average American to pay off the average balance of $8,200 on a credit card. It will take you 13 months to do that. So a little over a year. So you mean to tell me you're going to eat ramen noodles every day, work, and not see or do much of anything else for a year, for a little over a year? No, that's just not realistic. So build some realistic standards into this. It's just not realistic. You really expect people to do that, especially in this world where we're constantly, which is something else, where Dave is stuck in the 90s. He didn't have social media. He wasn't constantly seeing ads everywhere in his face telling him he needs to go do things. He didn't have Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, IG. Like, he didn't have everything in his face constantly saying like, "Ooh, look at me, I'm doing this. I'm out here doing this." He didn't have all of this. So yes, maybe in the 90s, it was a little easier to stay home, eat maybe your rice and beans that he talks about all the time, and just pay off his debt. But let's be realistic. We're not living in that type of world. People are out doing things. Even if you have to be a little creative, make your budget. Again, I do agree with the zero-based budget. However, you got to build in a little bit of fun. Otherwise, what you might have is people just saying, "Oh, I can't take it anymore. I'm about to go to I don't know. I'm about to go to the club and I'm about to spend it all." And, it's kind of similar to when you have a really restricting diet. And I've done that. I've been like, "Oh, I got to lose 15 pounds ASAP." And you do this crazy diet, right? And then you're like, at the end of it, you lose this weight and you're like, "Oh my gosh, you know what? I'm about to eat everything. I need the chips. I need this ice cream. I need these cookies. I need this cake. I just want everything. Give it to me." And then where are you? So it reminds me of that type of dynamic where you're restricting yourself so much to the point where it's really just unrealistic. So at some point, you are going to tell yourself, "Oh, I just can't do it anymore," right? Build in some flexibility for yourself. We have to be flexible in today's day and age. This is not the 90s. All right, moving on. So we've saved $1,000 because Dave says $1,000 covered your expenses in the 90s. And so it should cover your expenses today in 2021. Who cares about inflation? Who cares that cost of living has gone up? Who cares that the average rent in the US is above $1,000? So if you did lose your job, oh well, you got $1,000, so you kind of got a little bit of the rent. I don't know about your utilities though. I don't know about your car payment. I don't know about your insurance. Like, I don't know about this other stuff, but you got a little bit. You almost got the rent money. Come on, that is not going to do much for you. So we have the $1,000, right? Now we're paying off the debt. We paid off the debt. It's taken us an average of 13 months to pay off this credit card. We're done. Woohoo, yay. Now we can save 3 to 6 months of expenses for emergencies, for actual emergencies, which is really what you should have done in the first place. So we're waiting to pay off all this debt before we get to saving 3 to 6 months of expenses. You're late. Because again, what we can't take into account here is the timing. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. So if you did this in 2015, you're probably good. You've done it. You had a great plan, right? You had a great time with Dave Ramsey's plan. If you did this in a time where we're in a downturn, you started it at the end of 2019, well, you might be in a little messy situation. Because now what do? You have $1,000 and bam, life hits you. And now what do? You don't have the savings. Oh, it would have been nice to have my 3 to 6 months emergency fund that would have helped me out in this 2020 scenario. Oops. No, that should be first. And then you need to focus on the debt because you need to think of the savings as your insurance. Just like we pay insurance for everything else, we need to be paying insurance for our just general life. Like, what happens if something happens in my life? That should come first before everyone else gets their money. You need to get your money first. We got my insurance set up, 3 to 6 months of expenses. Bam, great. Now I can focus on trying to pay extra to my creditors. Yes, interest is accruing, but come on, interest has been accruing before you got to Dave Ramsey's baby steps. And we're not really focused on interest because Dave Ramsey says use the debt snowball method and pay the smallest to the largest amount, right? So we're not even taking into consideration really interest rates. And hello, how do I pronounce your name? Ogden Knight 801 Gaming. Hello. And the King of Kill, I do agree. He's stuck in the Clinton era. Those were the good times. Exactly. There was a lot of growth happening in this country. So yes, the inflation was a lot less, the cost of living was a lot less. So yes, this plan could work more easily. Today, it can be a challenge. And here's the thing too is that you have this one size fits all for finance, and that's not really how things work. Everyone has a different scenario. Every person in this country has a different scenario. Different types of people have a different scenario, right? What may work for a single person like me may not work for a family of four, a family of three, a family of two, or a couple. That's another big concerning thing for me. So let's kind of move along here. So we finally got to 3 to 6 months of expenses for the emergency. Yay! So I love that. I just think it's in the wrong section. That should be first. It should not be. It really should just be maybe 6 baby steps. Take out the 1,000 beginner fund. No, you need an emergency fund because clearly and a lot of people call in with these high debt scenarios. You need it even more because you haven't been managing things. You need a big buffer for the oops happening. What happens, right? Okay, so moving on. This is the issue I have. This whole time we haven't even been investing. So let's say you're in your 20s, you're in your 30s. These are like the crucial years for you to invest your money and see high returns later in life. You haven't been investing. So it takes you 13 months to pay off your credit card. And then on top of that, you also have student loan debt, which on average takes 21 years for someone to pay off, the average American. You're not going to be investing. You're not going to be investing for a minute, right? According to his plan. So he says now, baby step 4, you need to invest 15% of your income for retirement. The issue I have with this is that you should be doing this all along. I think people should be continuously investing. What happens when you're working at a company and you're working at a company, they have this benefit of matching with your 401k. You're losing out on that money. Free money. And it will grow. The average growth if you just put your money in the S&P 500, which Dave Ramsey talks about all of the time, 8 to 10% ROI, if I can say the word right or the acronym right, return on investment, maybe I should say that. You are missing out on 8 to 10% returns over the course of that time where you were not investing at all. And yes, frugal mama boys, debt free but depressed. It's really sad because it's like, Dave, do you know what people are doing? You're making $200 million. I love it. You're successful. I love that. But like your plan, it doesn't relate to, in my opinion, the average American today. I think he just needs to update it. He needs to update it, refresh it, bring it to 2021. Just bring it up a little bit. Refresh it just a little bit. That's what I'm asking. Do they have ramen in the 90s? I hope so. I bet they do. They have it in the 2000s because I remember eating it. I've eaten the cup noodle ramen, whatever. So yes, they have it in the 2000s. So I'm guessing they have it in the 90s. Pow pow, hi Pow Linda, welcome. All right, so moving on here with this idea of investing. So he's specifically saying invest 15% of your income for retirement. Most people, when they think about retirement, they're thinking about a 401k. And yes, I do think you should be saving in a 401k if that is provided for you. But I think you should also be investing outside of your 401k and outside of just retirement. Because the reason I say this is because you cannot take out your money for retirement unless you get some kind of loophole until you're 59 and a half years old without the taxes and fees that come with that. Why would you want to invest and put all your money into something that you cannot even touch until you're 59 and a half? Now, there's some benefits for putting some of your investment there, but I do not agree with all of it. So I actually think this number needs to increase. I think he needs to increase this number closer to 25%. So he should say at least 15% or something, because when you say invest 15%, a lot of times people are just going to invest 15%. No, you need to invest more than that. And you don't need to just invest for your retirement. Some people want to retire early. And this is why I keep going back to the issue with this plan is that it's one size fits all. Not everyone wants to work until they're 59 and a half years old. Some people would like to retire or be semi-retired earlier on. And so how do you access your money that you've been investing over a time period if you're putting it all in your 401k? And again, that's what most people think of when they think about their retirement investments. Okay, so that's my biggest issue there is it's late, it's too late. You're missing out on some of the best years that you can retire. Because here's the thing. You have a lot of interest that grows along when you have your money in these investments accounts. And the biggest asset you have is time. So he's taken the time portion completely out of the scenario. That is an asset to you. And he's saying, nope, just don't do anything. You're not investing. Now, one reason he says he keeps the plan this way and you hold off investing is because that's supposed to be a motivator for someone to get out of debt. You can't even invest. You can't take part in your benefits plan, whatever. You can't invest until you have this debt paid off as a motivator. I get that. However, that does not trump the time that you can literally put into your investments. You can't get back, like, let's say you're 27 and it takes you 3 years to work Dave Ramsey's plan because you got $60,000 in student loan debt and you got $15,000 on a credit card and you're only making $60,000 a year or something like that. Well, when are you going to be investing? You're not going to be investing in your 20s. You're going to now be investing in your 30s. So you're pushing back your investments later. I don't agree with that. I think you should always be investing. Always be investing, because if we have savings, so we have our insurance set up, we should be investing for our future. It kind of puts the pay off the debt over investing for your future self, whether that's at 59 and a half or if that's at 30 or 35. All right, so hey Sharky, welcome. So the next thing here, and I'm going to close this out pretty soon, is the saving for college for children. I have no issue with that. I think that's great. I do think a lot of parents should be focused on also making sure their children are getting grants and scholarships over them paying for college, just because tuition is insane. But I also agree that parents should help their kids or their children if they need it. It's really hard to get away from the urge to say kids versus children. Just going to put that out there. Okay, and then he's saying pay off the house. I love that. I think it is in the right place. And he's saying then you build your wealth and you give. So that's where you kind of build, you get into bigger investments. But here's the thing. Again, time. So now we have to save for our kids, our children's college. Then we're paying off the house. And then we're looking into building our wealth and giving. Well, why can't you do that earlier on? Because your investments may help you to pay off that house. Your investments may help you to pay off your debt. You just never know with some of this. So I don't agree. Those are my issues with Dave Ramsey's plan. Mainly that they're outdated. It's just not the 90s anymore. Dave, it's not the 90s. It's not going to work for everyone. A one size fits all does not work for everyone. And I think it can work for many, but it's not for everyone. And I think you're missing out on a lot because of timing. We cannot time markets. We don't know what type of events are going to happen. And so when you have something like 2020, 2021 occur, having the $1,000 starter emergency fund does not help you. Being in this high output, paying off debt doesn't quite help you either. It's good, but it doesn't help you. Waiting until you paid off the debt to have your 3 to 6 months of expenses for emergency does not help you. I think that is insurance. You should always have your insurance in place. And that comes before you're worried about paying off everyone else. And then investing is the fourth step. Investing should be crucial throughout this process. It should be there because you're missing out on a lot of growth, a lot of gains. Because again, like let's say, okay, you're done with your debt payoff and you end up being able to invest in this market like 2021 where the stocks were, well, earlier this year, right? Where stocks were way up here. You missed out on great buying opportunity because you couldn't invest based off of this plan. You could not invest. And last year was actually a great time to invest because you got a lot of discounts. And I am a huge believer in when the stock prices are going down, that's when I like to buy. I see it as a discount and I swoop in, I grab whatever I have in my watch list. I'm like, oh, there's blood on Wall Street. I'll take a little bit of this. And you should always, of course, keep a little stash in your investments accounts just for those moments. Obviously, your savings, it gives you more flexibility when you have a stash of cash to work with. However, I don't think you should just be hoarding cash just to have it, solely for emergencies, solely for insurance. Okay. I think I'm at the end of my video. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching me today. Thank you for listening. And I will close out with Pow Pow making the hand emojis. King Akil is saying, I think IDK, I think I'm feeling the Dr. Dre method for my children. You need to stop, King Akil. I think I'm feeling the Dr. Dre method for my children's finances. If you didn't catch the Dr. Dre conversation, it is available to my members. I will probably make it back available to everyone at some point, but right now it's just available for my members just because I want things to cool down a little bit. Because we had an interesting conversation. It was a heated conversation, and yeah, that's what I'm going to say about that. But yes, that's my thoughts on Dave Ramsey's plan. Sharky says, I would agree, Jess. The earlier one starts investing, the better. There are IRA catch-ups one can do later, but that can actually be tougher as one approaches retirement age. Yes, and here's the thing. I think about just the thought about retiring and just the worker mentality in the United States and this whole idea of you need to work until you're 59 and a half, at least, ideally until you're like 65, 67. Like, look at people's bodies oftentimes, especially if you're not heavily taking care of it. You look at your family members sometimes and you're just looking at the different age groups and you're looking at someone in their 50s, 60s, 70s. And I mean, I have thought like, oh my gosh, I don't think I want to be working at that age. Like, because I mean, here's the thing. Things start to slow down. So yeah, this whole process that he has in place, I think is good. I just think it's outdated. I think it's inflexible. And I don't think it really meets the needs of today's world. Everyone does not want to retire at 59 and a half. Some people want to be semi-retired now. There are things like the FIRE movement, right? People are trying to invest so that they can retire early and have more flexibility in life. There's life that happens when you're not, while you're not doing anything and paying off your debt. So anyway, thank you for listening. I'm going to close this out. Appreciate you all being here. And I have a couple of other conversations happening soon. Hope to see you there. And with that, I will wish you all a good night. Bye.